All right, we're at the beginning of the new parak right on the daf. Amazing. Daf Chav Beis Amud Aleph. So we continuing along the line of the last parak. We're continuing regarding the avodas of the day. Lav Dafka Yom Kippur. This Mishnah could be talking about the job of every single day. It's a machlokes rishonim whether the word birishona in the first place or at first is talking about specifically Yom Kippur, or no, it's talking about globally the entire year. So this we just have to talk about. The first job of the day was the Trumas Hadesh, the removing of the ash from the top of the Mizbeach. All night long, the emurim, the sacrificial parts, were burning on top of the base, on top of the altar, because they had to be taken care of before the morning. Otherwise, we'd have a problem of lina staying over all night. And so there was a lot of ash on top. So there were two pieces here. This Trumas Hadeshen, separating the ashes, and Hoitzias Hadeshen, taking out the ashes. So this, whether this is considered an avodah, part of the service, or whether in fact it's really not part of the service, is a question that's going to come up in a little while in the Gemara, specifically about the removing of the hoitzas of the ashes of the deshen. In the meantime, as you know, we've talked about it before. Throughout the day, there was 4 lotteries that took place, starting with the Trumas Hadeshen, starting with the removing of the ash. There were 4 lotteries that took place throughout the day. Pious lotteries. And the Kahanim were then given, based upon these lotteries, whoever won, did the various avodas that they won. How this all came about, since Minat Torah we find nothing about lotteries and how do you give out the things, is the discussion of this Mishnah, which happens to be a very, very famous Mishnah because it's got a story in it, and the Gemara brings further stories that give us a very clear picture of the mindset that was happening specifically at the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. And the warped, and I'm using that word advisedly, the warped thinking, where people's clearly, as we're going to see, we're not thinking straight. They were not putting the thing that was important, they made unimportant, and the things that were less important, they made more important. They became holier than thou on things that they shouldn't have been, and put aside the other things, as we're going to see. So let's begin. With that Akdama, let's begin. Biri Shaina, in the beginning, and again, whether this means on Yom Kippur and the first job, and we're saying that the Trumas Hadeshen does not have to be done by the Kohen Gadol, or we're talking about globally the entire year. I'm going to explain it as globally the entire year. We're talking about every day of the year. Biri Shaina. Call me Sharaitza Litroy Besamizbeach. Any Kohen who wanted to come and do Trumas Hadeshen, Litroy, who wanted to separate the ash from the Mizbeach, could go ahead and do it. Bisman Shemehem Merubim, but in the event that there were many Kahanim who wanted to do the Trumas Hadeshen, surprisingly, since the Trumas Hadeshen was done before daybreak, the whole reason why we removed the ashes, so that the carbon atomid that's brought in the morning should be brought on a pristine, clean top of the Mizbeach. So they didn't expect a lot of people to show up. And lo and behold, the 645 minyan all of a sudden became the most popular minyan. Bisman Shein Merubin. Roitzin ba'olam bekeves. So listen what happened. This is how they began. They had a foot race. They ran and it went up the ramp, the big ramp leading up to the altar. We're talking about the Mizbeach HaChitza, the outside, the copper, the Mizbeach Nechoshes. And whoever preceded his chaver by 4 amas, what this means? Does that mean? Simply, it seems to me within 4 amas of the top of the mizbeach, but the Gemara is going to say it possibly can mean 6 amas to the top of the mizbeach. We'll let the Gemara get into it. So whoever reached within 4 amas of the top of the mizbeach for the purposes of right now, Zacha was Zacha to do it. But if the 2 of them raced up and were equal, they got to the finish line at the same time, it was a photo finish. The Mamuna, the administrator, would say to them, Hatzpiyu, put out a finger. The Mahe Moitzim, and what did they put out? Achas oishtayim, 1 or 2 fingers. So the Gemara, of course, is going to explain if the whole idea, in other words, they were only counted as 1, obviously, 1 person. But sometimes they put out 2 fingers. The Gemara is going to say, what's shot in 2 fingers? Right? They might see an agudol b'migdash, but they did not put out the thumb in the base of Migdash. Because in the thumb, if you take a look, everybody, you could spread out your fingers, you could look like 2 different kahanim. If the guy counting wasn't paying attention, you could spread your fingers out so much, you could put out this finger and that finger, and the kohen is going to count this finger as 1 person and that person as 1 person. So the Gemara is going to say, because of Ramoyis, because of cheating, you can't use the thumb. Now, we get to the famous story. It occurred that the 2 kahanim were racing up there, and they were even, and they ran, and they were going up the ramp. And one of them pushed his chaver, and he fell off, and he broke his leg. So one of the kahanim, in his zeal to do the avodah, went ahead and gave his chaver a shove right off the side of the ramp, and he fell and he broke his leg. V'chiv and Shiro Bezdin, when Bezdin realized Shaboyin l'dei sakana, that the kahanim would now be getting into danger, hikniu shalayu toimin es hamizbeach ela b'payis. They said that the kahanim should not separate, the kahanim to be selected to separate the ash, the Trumas Hadeshen, would only be done, the selection would be done through the lottery. And that means with the finger lottery, by the counting. There have to have been 4 lotteries each day. And this was the first of the lotteries. Now, let me just talk up here a second. Okay? So this is the what Kapayis Sarishan. So this is what he called. So now, obviously, this is the reason why we're saying it's not Yom Kippur. Because on Yom Kippur, who did the whole avodah? The Kohen Gadol. There was no need for the lottery. So Elamai, the Pashtus, this whole mission is not talking about Yom Kippur, but is in fact talking about every other day of the year. The other thing is the pious was done. We have to understand what it means. It obviously wasn't done if there were only 2 kahanim, because then obviously you don't really count. It's very obvious what you're doing. So it talks about where there was a bunch of kahanim, and then what they did is that he would pick a number way above the amount of kahanim. So let's say there were 50 kahanim, he would say 103, right? And so we'd go ahead. So what it made it that you couldn't figure out who exactly and what. Okay, now we're up to 22:82. The Gemara says the Gemara.
By the way, it's now I haven't seen that many Mishnahs, but this wastes a lot of real estate on that Mishnah just about that way to tell that there were lots finally done. No?
Correct. Yes. So I deliberately did not get into that because, like I said, this Mishnah tells us a lot, unfortunately, about the mindset of what was going on with Klal Yisrael at the end of the second Beis Hamikdash.
Okay.
And I
Fine.
want you to keep that, Charlie, as we're working through the daf, keep referring back to what you just pointed out, that this Mishnah is in fact very strangely put together. So the Gemara already points out something. From here it seems to say, in the beginning, there was no lot. There was no lottery to separate the truth. But it was mashma. What did the Mishnah end with? Arba payose have it. There were 4 lotteries, and this was the first lottery. From here it's mashma that the other 3 lotteries were always there. It's only this one that didn't have a lottery at the beginning. So Frey the Gemara, but at the beginning, my Kamaloya Tiknul Rabbanan Paisa, why did the Rabbanan institute a lot for the Truma Sadesh from the beginning, just like they did with all the other avodas, which is clear from our Mishnah that all the other work services of the day were definitely done on the day of pious. So listen to the Gemara. Me, Kara, Sover, and again, this is human psychology being played out over here, which we all know today. And I'm going to point out again, Charlie, which minion has more people? The 645 or the 830?
Probably the 830.
Correct. Now we're going to see why that is. Me, Kara, Sover. Since the separating of the ash, the Truma Sadesh is really a nighttime service, because it's done before daybreak, in order that the carbon tubman be brought with a clean top of the mizbeach. Loy chashivalu, it wouldn't be important to the kahanim. They wouldn't want to get up so early. V'loy asu, and they would not come to the 645 minyan. Chiv on the chazu de kasu, when Chazal saw that they in fact were coming and fighting over who gets to do the first avodah of the day. And it became kind of controversial, and they got exposed to danger. That's when they went ahead and said, we're going to establish that the Truma Sadesh is also going to be done through a lottery. So Frank the Gemara, what are you talking about? We just said, why is there ash? There's ash because the sacrificial parts, the Evarim Uperodim, Varei Evarim Uperodim, the limbs and the fats of the Tomid, the avodas lilo, which are the avodah of the night, the Tomid Shalvenu Abayim. Oops, I'm sorry, give me a second. The Tomid Shalvenu Abayim. The afternoon Tomid of the previous day, its fats and meats were burnt on the Mizbeach all night. The avodas lilo, which is also a nighttime service, particular Rabbanan Pious. And the Rabbanim from the beginning established a lottery for it. So says the Gemara, a very basic human understanding. The limbs and the fats are the limbs and the fats of the last avodah of the previous day. It's the conclusion of the daytime service, and therefore was considered important to the Kahanim. And the answer is, because when people are up already, they'll fight. They'll fight not to stay awake. Mashenk and getting out of bed in the morning is much harder. You rather get back under the covers. The Yetzer Hara in the morning to get out of bed is much harder to fight than you have to go to sleep. Exactly. Hi, Navi. So says the Gemara. Wait a minute. Hi, Navi. The separation of the ash. The Chila avoided the Yoma, who is the beginning of the avoid of the daytime. The Amar of Yochanan, Kiddush Yodav with Truma Sadesh, and if a Kohen sanctifies his hands and his feet, he's toivel his hands and his feet in the Kiyar at night in preparation for separating the Truma Sadesh, the separating of the ash. Lamacha, when the morning arrives, Tzarech LeKadosh. He doesn't have to go ahead again to wash his hands and feet. Shetkvar Kiddush Mitchila Abayda, because he's already sanctified them at the beginning of the Abayda. Because the Trumas Hadeshen is considered the first Abayda of the day, because it's being done in order to bring the carbon tumid in the morning with a clean top. So it's also a beginning Abayda, even though, of course, it's done at night before daybreak. Says the Gemara, Ema, Shetkvar. He doesn't have to sanctify his hands because he's already sanctified them from before for the sake of the avodah. Since he's coming to do this, is what he call it. Since he's coming dafka to separate the ash in order to bring the carbon tumid in the morning cleanly, that is all one thing. But ikadiyamri, now they come to explain. Ikadiyamri, mi karasabot, Chazal first thought, even the Ika Oydeshina, since at the time of the Trumas Hadesh, the separating of the ash, 22H3, there's an overwhelming desire to sleep. So people will not come, because again, getting out of bed is much harder than staying awake and watching the Knicks play in Houston until all hours of the night. The Kahanim will not get out of bed. Even the Chazad also, when they saw that the Kahanim were getting out of bed, because tsunami day sakana, they saw that they were being exposed to danger, because everybody wanted to do it, and they were getting aggressive. They were mistacking the lots. Let's go back again. The limbs and the fats that were burning overnight from the carbon tumid shalbenu abayim of the previous day, the afternoon tumid that was brought the previous day, its fats were being burned at night. It's also nighttime. The ikar oineshina. There's also, we got to worry about this overwhelming desire to sleep. Particularly Rabbanim Paisa and the Rabbanim were Masaki to make a lottery all the way from the beginning. And for the Gemara, what we've been saying the whole time, Shani Minga Migna Mimekam, sleeping is different from rising. That is, a person's inclination to go to sleep at night is not as strong as his inclination to delay in the morning, to quote the art scroll. And we all know it. You get up in the morning, the covers feel good, the air conditioner is blowing just perfect. You don't want to get out of bed to fight, to get out of bed, to make it in time for shul. And that is why we all know that the 8:30 minyanim and the 9:30 minyanim are always more popular than the 6:45 minyan. That's the answer. Simple. Okay, and this again tells us a great insight. Chazal always took into account human nature. They understood human psychology and understood that halacha has to fit that psychology. We were created a certain way. The struggle against our evil inclination, our inclination, is universal. There are universal rules to this. Obviously, there are some people who are morning people, but most of us are night people. That's the way it is. Says the Gemara. Here we go. Now, was the takana, the enactment of requiring a lottery for the Trumas Hadesha because of this reason, because of the foot race and the dangers when they saw that somebody was pushed off the ramp and broke a leg. But surely there was another reason. Tanya, because we learned whoever wins the lottery to separate the ash, would automatically, when you win the lottery for the separation of the ash, which is really a very dirty job, obviously, you automatically, when you also got the privilege of arranging the wood on top of the mizbeach, on the pyre on top of the mizbeach, and the privilege of taking the 2 blocks of wood specifically for the pyre. There were 2, besides all the other little pieces of wood, there were 2 main blocks that were always put there. So according to this, you ended up with 2 other avoiders. So obviously, everybody would want that because you get 3 for the price of 1. Well, then in that case, Chazal would have certainly required a lottery from the beginning. What it calls. So therefore, Abarais certainly contradicts our Mishnah, which says that at the beginning there was no lottery until there became a sakana, until there became a danger from the race. So how is it that this one with the 3, this price that says whoever wins the lottery for the Trumas Hadeshen gets also the Shnei Gizrei eats him and the Seder Amarocha? Amar Hashi, no. You're reading it, you're missing a point here. Shnei Takantes Havi. In fact, we're dealing with 2 enactments, one after the other. Me, at the beginning, Sabbath Chazal thought lawyers to the Kanim are not coming because they're not going to get up in the morning. When they saw the Kanim were coming, but also they sakana, and they became exposed to the danger of the fight of being pushed off the ramp and breaking a leg. Takinuloi payas. They instituted the lots. But once they instituted the lottery, the Kahanim stopped coming because they said, before, if I quickly get out of bed, I'll be the first Kayin, I'll get to do the Avodah. But now that it came down to pure chance, right? If it came down to pure chance, my odds are like winning the lottery, right? It's barely anything. In that case, why should I get out of bed? So guess what happened? Nobody started showing up. So now they said, okay, listen, I can't go ahead and have it the other way because the race is getting too dangerous. But if I go ahead and do a lottery, nobody's showing up because everybody thinks the odds are too long. Amri, they said, who says that the lottery is going to fall on us? The odds are too long. So then, they said, whoever will win the lottery of separating the ash, we're adding on 2 more avoiders you automatically get to do. You get to put down the 2 blocks and prepare the whole pile. Now you get 3 for the price of 1. Look, Jews never turn down a free offering. Okay, what happened? They added these 2, so the Kahanim started coming back for the lottery. Now, Mishnah said Vaita, when there were many, the Kahanim had a race, they all ran up the ramp, and whoever got to within 4 amas won the privilege of separating the ash. Now, we just have to talk for a second. I want, if you don't mind, turning 2 pages to 22b1. Okay, just 22b1. There is a diagram on number 1 of the Mizbeach. If you look carefully on the top, you'll see that there's an extra piece that goes like an L shape on the bottom, on the base of the Mizbeach. That base was like an Amma. Okay, and above it was another Amma. And on top, where it's gray, there was also another Amma. So now when we say within 4 Ammas, you can decide what you say. Do we say we're starting from the bottom, which includes that base? So therefore, when you race up, it was within 6 Ammas of the top. Or no, it really means we're not counting the bottom, we're counting just the ramp, and it's 4 Ammas from the top, as opposed to 6 Ammas from the top, because we got 2 extra Ammas on the bottom. That is the entire question of this Gemara, and the Gemara is going to end up with Teku. I don't know. I don't remember. Okay? So that's all I wanted to show. Back to the Gemara where we are, 22a3 on the bottom. Amar Rav Papa says, Rav Papa, pshitali, it's obvious to me. Arba amas to araloi. We're not talking about the 4 amas closest to the foot of the ramp. We're obviously not talking about a very short race. We're not talking about a sprint. We're not talking about a sprint to just the beginning of the ramp. Right? Simple island bekebetz to that, because the Mishnah says they ran and went up the ramp. Going up the ramp is not the first 4 amas of the ramp. Kamaisa namiloi. We're not talking 22A4. We're not talking about the first 4 amos of the ramp itself. That we're not talking about either, because it says v'roitzim ba'olam b'keves tanan. They ran and ascended the ramp. V'hada kol ha'koydim eschaveirem. We read whoever preceded his colleague into the 4 amos. So Elamai were further up on the ramp. The beini ubeini namiloi. If you're talking somewhere between the top and the bottom, somewhere in the middle of the ramp, that's no good. The loy Messiah milsa, because there's no specific place of what the middle of the ramp is. There's no line. There's no finishing line, as it were. There's no tape to be ripped on this race. So Elamai pshitali de gabim mizbeach tanan. It's obvious to me that the 4 amos means up to the mizbeach itself, the altar. So now that we've established the 4 amos is next to the mizbeach itself, the top of the altar where the fire is. This is what I mentioned before. Arba amos shamru, the hedya amma yisoid. Does it include the amma of the base, the amma soivev, and the amma of the ledge, which is the ledge? If you look at the picture, after the ramp finishes, the gray area, there was a little ledge before you actually got onto the altar itself, where the Kahanim were able to walk around. So now we're on 22B1. 22B1, Oidilma bar Ma'ama Yisoid, apart from the Amma of the base, the Amma side, and then the Amma of the ledge. If you look at number 1 in the art scroll, look at the second paragraph. It's really Rashi, but we'll do it inside in the English because it explains it very well. Rav Papa asks whether the 4 amos mentioned in the Mishnah were measured from the point where the ramp met the upper surface of the Mizbeach, or from the point where the ramp reached the 2 amma wide area of the base and the ledge. According to the first approach, the race ended within 4 amos from the top of the ramp. According to the second approach, it reached a total of 6 amos from the top of the ramp. That's all. And now the Gemara says, Teiku, Tishbi Yitaritz, Kushmi Boys. We'll have to wait for Eliyahu Nabi to give us the answer, because none of us remember what happened with the race, because eventually the race got canceled anyways, which we haven't got into yet, and we're going to very, very shortly. The very sad situation of the race. Charlie, you with me? We're good? Charlie, we're good? 1 second. Charlie,
we're good. We're good. We're good.
Oh, hi, Jerry. Welcome.
I've been here the whole time.
Oh, wow. Thanks for. All right, good. Thanks, Jerry. Wonderful to see your face again. So the Mishnah goes further. If the 2 of them were even, the administrator would say, put out your fingers. Tanan, the Gemara says, he would actually say, put out your fingers for a count. So Zek the Gemara, but let's count the Kahanim themselves. What's with the fingers? What's with the fingers? Count the people themselves. And here we go to what we all know. The idea is that when we do a census, we do not count ourselves. And the essence of reason is simply, when you count a person, you're limiting the person. You're limiting, these are your numbers and no more. We don't hold that. Jews are limitless. First of all, we're talking about spiritually. We are limitless. Number 2, our influence in the world is limitless. As we all know, we are small people, but we have an outside influence on the world. It's always been that way. Jewish history and world history run in tandem. And 3, as we're going to see, because we are compared to the stars and the sands. So the Gemara says like this: Messiah the Rabbi Yitzchak, the Omer Rabbi Yitzchak, Oslim Noya is Yisrael. It's also to count the heads of Klal Yisrael through a head count. Afilu l'dvar mitzvah, even for the person, for the need of a mitzvah. Tiksiv, when it says regarding Shol HaMelech, when he said to his soldiers, Vayavkim bebezek, and he counted them through pottery shards. Through pottery shards. Okay, this was during the time of Shol HaMelech's military campaign against Ammon. He didn't count the soldiers directly, he counted through pottery shards, right? And which, even though he needed to know how many people he needed in order to rescue people who had been captured by the Ammonim, which of course is a mitzvah opinion Shavuyim, still he didn't count them directly. Break the Gemara Maskabla Rav Ashi, Mimai Dahai Bezek. How do you know the word Bezek? Lishta de Vizaku is a lishon of what is shattered, meaning shattered pieces of pottery. Dilma Shema Damasahu. Maybe it's the name of a city. Diksiva Yimsu es Adoni Bezek bebezek, and they found Adoni's Bezek in Bezek. Elamei Hacha says Rashi. He says, I got a better writer. Vayishma Shol etza'ama yifken b'teloyim. And Shol had all the people summoned, and he counted them with sheep, with lambs. This is when he summoned them for the war against Amalek. He told the volunteers to each take a sheep, and he counted this way how many soldiers he had. Even though, of course, fighting Amalek is a mitzvah say b'nat Torah. Timchez zeicher Amalek, destroy Amalek. And of course, we're going to go into this story quite a bit. This is the famous story where Shol HaMelech killed off Amalek, but did not kill Agag, and did not wipe out the animals of Amalek. And that's when Hashem said, what it called, Nicham, that he shouldn't be king anymore. And that's when David HaMelech's Melucha essentially started beginning. So we're going to go through that somewhat today, over the next 10 minutes or so. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Elazar, Kol Amoines Yisrael, whoever counts the people of Israel, over Belav is actually over on a negative commandment. Shenema v'hoya mispa b'nei Yisrael kechol hayoim asher lo yimad. The number of the children of Klal Yisrael would be like the sand in the sea, which cannot be measured. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak Omer, actually over b'shnei lavin, the one this pasuk asher lo yimad that cannot be measured, and shenema lo yimad v'lo yisaper, which cannot be measured or counted. So now let's stop a second. We all know that we most certainly could be counted. We're not a very big nation. In Parshas V'eschanan, the Hashem Yisparach tells us that. Listen to this. Just to repeat what it says over there. Give me 1 second. In Parshas V'eschanan, right at the end, it says, Ki am kodesh atal Hashem Elokecha, because you are a holy nation to Hashem your God. In you Hashem chose to be a separate nation. From all the nations that are on the face of the earth. Now listen to the next pasuk. Not because you're more numerous than all the nations, that Hashem desired you, and he chose you. Because you are the smallest from all the nations. So what's going on here? Are we like the sands of the seas that cannot be counted? And here Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us that Hashem chose us not because we're the biggest, because we're in fact the smallest. So that's why we're talking about the spiritual component. And the influence of Klal Yisrael because of that spiritual component throughout the history of the world. Because to this day, we are still fighting the war between Athens and Yerushalayim. To quote many people, including Rabbi Sachs, it's the same battle today between modernity, between aesthetics, the circus, entertainment, and the entertainment of the soul and the mind, i.e. learning. To us, To no other people in the world are their greatest heroes their teachers, their Rabbeim, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe teacher Rabbeim. Tell me, in any other people in the world, would they be celebrating a Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who all his life goes from his house to the shul and from shul to his house, and yet he's the numero uno mensch in our world. Think about that for a second, because that is who we celebrate. We celebrate the spiritual, the soul, the mind. That battle between Athens and Jerusalem is the battle between us and Greece, us and Rome. It's the battle of the West, of the Western mind. Which way is it going to go? And you can see when the morality of the West goes, its strength goes. And when the Jewish way of ethics and morality and being a light unto the nation rises, it switches. That's what's, of course, what we're talking about in the real sense of the world. Of course, there is another way of saying this. There is a great belief that if you took the genealogy of most Italians and Spanish people, you'd find that there were plenty of Jews. There is no question about it that the tribes in Afghanistan and in Pakistan who have eerily names like Menashe and a few other ones that certainly sound remarkably like the 10 Shvatim. So we may be very surprised when Mashiach gets here how many people really have Jewish lineage in the world. But
go to an Indian wedding and you'll see what goes on.
It's
an
very
Indian,
simple.
Hello, I'm talking about Badekin. I'm talking about a chuppah type of thing, lahavdil.
There you go. And I will tell you further, take it further, Jerry. When you understand Buddhism or Confucianism, and they talk about returning to the wheel, and you're talking about Gilgal, which is what that is, Galgal, the wheel, right? Returning, and you understand it, you realize that their underpinnings are remarkably Jewish. So that way, there is a physical reality to the spirituality as well. But it's an interesting thing to note the pasuk in Veschanan and these psukim, because one is a physical count, but one is a spiritual count, and that clearly is the case here. Let's go a little further. We got about 5 more minutes. Amir Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani. Rav Nosson Rami. Rav Nosson had a contradiction. Ksiv, it's written. The number of the children of Klal Yisrael will be like the sand of the sea. 22b2. V'ksiv, and it says, Asher lo yimad v'lo yisafer, and it's written they cannot be measured or counted, which means that they do not have a finite number, while the sands of the sea have a finite number. Says the Gemara like Kasha. Bisman Yisrael oiser Ritzayin Shalmakai. This is where Klal Yisrael does the will of the Ritzayin Shalmakai of the omnipresent. They will be uncountable, because the spiritual greatness will rise and rise and rise to unbelievable lengths, to infinite lengths. Kan Bisman Shein oiser Ritzayin Shalmakai. When they compare to the sand of the sea, is when they do not do the will of the market. Rabbi Oimel, Rabbi says, Omar Mishum Abba Yosef ben Dustai Loikasha. Bidei Adam, the one that says Asher Lo Yimad Lo Yisafet, they cannot be measured or counted, is a count taken by man. A man cannot count it. Kamidei Shemayim. Shemayim, each one of us is an individual. Each one of us is a world unto its own. Each one is a world unto its own. Every man be shili nivra. Every person needs to wake up in the morning and say, because me, the world was created, the universe was created. So each one is an individual kapi shemayim and therefore can be counted. Amir Ravna nihilai bar Aidi Amir Shmuel chivin shenismana odam parnis ala tzibor. Once a person becomes a leader over the community, for an example, Charlie Turing, right, who was the president of BJC, Misasher, he becomes rich. In the beginning, it says by Shalom Melech, he he counted them with tannery rods. Later, when he established his kingship, the besides came Bataloyim, he counted them with sheep. But maybe it means Shalom Melech counted them with his own sheep. So it says the Gemara, okay, my Rabusa the Milsa. Then why would the pasuk go out of its way to tell us that he counted them with sheep? Elamai, it's coming to tell us he counted them with sheep because Baruch Hashem he became rich. Says the Gemara. So let me just see where we up to over here. Do I want to stop? Okay. You know what? This is the. It's not. It's. You know, we can go a few more minutes. Let's just go a few more minutes. Vayera Benacha. Okay. So now, remember we mentioned before that Shaul Melech was fighting against Amalek, and this is what happened. Vayera Benacha, and Shaul contended in the valley. Amar Rabbani ad Iske Nachal. Shaul contended with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How did Shaul HaMelech make the mistake and think that when he was told to kill everything in Amalek, that he left over the choicest sheep and goats and oxen? How did he make such a mistake? Says the Gemara, Al Iske Nachal are regarding the issue of Eglah Arufa, which is killed in a valley. Again, what is Eglah Arufa? If a dead person is found between two cities, you measure from which city it comes from, and that's it closest to, and that city has to bring an Eglah Arufa down in the Nachal, in the valley, and has to kill it and stone it and say all the psukim and say, we are bringing this akapara. We had nothing to do with the murder. We just, what do you call it? We don't take murder lightly. Okay? Keep what I just said, by the way, in mind. If not for today, then for tomorrow. We don't take murder lightly. Later, that wasn't always the case. Just remember what I just said. But here, al iske naka, what was going on? When the Holy One, blessed be HaKadosh Baruch Hu, said to Shaul, he says, Amalek, go and strike down Amalek, the men and the women alike, the infants and the ones who are suckling alike, and the ox and sheep alike, camel and donkey alike. Wipe Amalek off the world. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I don't want a Holocaust thousands of years later. I don't want Amalek around. Okay? I don't need a Hitler to be born. Wipe them off the map. Shmuel argued with the Rabbi Shalom, and he said, since the din, the halacha is, with regard to taking of one life, the Torah says, bring an Eglah Arufa for atonement when you find one murdered person lying between two cities. All of these lives, the women, the children, the babies, shouldn't I require an atonement as well? And if the men of Amalek sin, did the animals sin? And if the adults sin, did the minors sin? Yotza Baskel v'Amrlai. Al tihi tzaddik harbe. Don't be such a tzaddik. Are you trying to tell me, says the Rabbi Shalom, that you're more merciful than me? That you understand things better than I do? Don't be such a tzaddik. Do what tzidkis is do what I tell you to do. You don't always have to know the why. We are now on Chuf Beis Amud Beis 22b3. And when Shaul said to Doeg, this is even another case. Listen to this. This is the case when David HaMelech was running away from Shaul when Shaul was trying to kill David. So he went to the city of Noiv, Ir Kahanim, and David told the Kahanim, hide me, but he didn't say hide me. He said, I'm on a secret mission for Shaul HaMelech. So the Kahanim believed him. So they brought him in, they clothed him, they gave him food to eat. Doeg saw this. went and slandered the Kahanim that they were siding with David, and Shaul got infuriated and commanded that Noivir Kahanim be completely annihilated. Saiv atu poga b'kahanim, you circle around and slay the Kahanim. Yotza basto v'amruloi al tiro sharbet. Don't be so wicked. Stop. Don't just assume that it's Moirid b'malchus. Get the facts. And he just acted impulsively. So 2 times Kabasco came out and Shalom Melech. Amar Rav Huna, Kam aloi choli v'loi margish gavro demoris hiyaya. How speed from sickness and worry is the person whose help, whose oizer, whose strength is his master in heaven. Shol ba'achas v'ol saloi. Shaul made an avera once by not killing out everybody in Amalek, and it was reckoned against him that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm raising up another king instead of him, and that would be David. David Bishtayin, David erred twice, the loy also lied, and it wasn't held against him. And the reason is, as we're going to see, is because David made tshuva right away. Shalom Melech tried to answer. He tried to give an answer why he didn't kill all the answers, and only afterwards he said, okay, Chotasi, I didn't have Eva. David right away, when shown the mistake, immediately what he called ask for forgiveness. So the case of Agag, the Melech HaMolech, where he didn't kill everybody and he didn't even kill Agag. What are you talking about? There's a second case when he wiped out the Kahanim unfairly in the city of Noib. Says the Gemara, a Maisa Agag Siv, by the case of the Maisa Agag, which was obviously before the city of Noib, because by that time David already was on the scene as an anointed one by Shmuel. It says, Hashem said regarding the mice of Agag, when he left Agag and the animals alive, Hashem said to Shmuel, Nichamti kemalachti es Shaul HaMelech. I regret that I made Shaul HaMelech. David, let me just see where we're up to over here. It's, you know what? This is where we're going to stop, right here. David Bishtayim, what's the story? And this is going to be the story of what do you call it, of Bathsheba and Uriah, etc.